In the brutal carnival world of 1980s professional wrestling, wars weren't just fought in the ring. They were fought over television time slots, pay-per-view buy rates, and in the boardrooms where empires were won and lost. This is a story about the end of one such empire. But it's more than that. This is the story of how Jim Crockett Promotions, the heart of the National Wrestling Alliance, flew too close to the sun. And how, in the ashes of its collapse, Vince McMahon found the perfect opportunity to make his ultimate adversary, the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, pay the price. This is the tragic fallout from the night Jim Crockett sold his soul, and how it led to the American Dream being brought to his knees. Before the war, there was a kingdom, and that kingdom was Jim Crockett Promotions. Founded way back in 1931 and headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, JCP was more than just a wrestling company. It was a Southern institution, a cornerstone of the National Wrestling Alliance. For decades, the Crockett family ran the Mid-Atlantic Territory, a sprawling domain built on blood, sweat, and tradition. This wasn't the glitz and glamour of the North. This was gritty, believable, athletic, professional wrestling. It felt real because, to the people who packed arenas in Greensboro, Charlotte, and Atlanta, it was real. By the early 1980s, Jim Crockett Jr. had taken over the family business and set his sights on something bigger. The old territory system, a gentleman's agreement between regional promoters, was starting to crumble. From the Northeast, a predator was emerging: Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation, which was aggressively expanding its cartoonish brand of sports entertainment across the country. Crockett saw the writing on the wall. To survive, JCP had to go national itself, and at the heart of that ambition, the very soul of the promotion, was one man: Dusty Rhodes. To just call Dusty Rhodes a wrestler is to miss the point entirely. Dusty was a phenomenon. Billed as the son of a plumber, he was the total opposite of the chiseled, statuesque champions of the era. He had a fleshy, powerful body, a signature lisp, and a charisma that poured out of him like soul music. He wasn't a superhero, he was the everyman, the blue-collar warrior fighting for the common folk. His legendary Hard Times promo in 1985 wasn't just a wrestling speech, it was a sermon for anyone who had ever felt the sting of unemployment or the weight of a factory closing down. It resonated so deeply that fans would approach him in arenas with tears in their eyes, thanking him for giving them a voice. But Dusty's genius wasn't just in the ring. Behind the scenes, he was the lead booker, the creative mind shaping the entire promotion. He was the architect of JCP's greatest triumphs. Long before Vince McMahon even conceived of WrestleMania, Dusty Rhodes created Starrcade in 1983. It wasn't just a big show. It was a revolutionary concept, the NWA's flagship event and the first true wrestling supercard, built around the biggest feuds of the year. He invented the brutal, iconic War Games match. He oversaw the rise of legends like Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen, creating a product so compelling and so authentic that, for a time, it was arguably the best in the world. JCP wasn't just competing with the WWF, it was offering an alternative vision of what wrestling could be. It was the gritty realism of the NWA versus the rock and wrestling circus of the WWF. It was the American Dream versus the Hulk Hogan machine. And for a while, the Southern Kingdom was winning. After a disastrous attempt by Vince McMahon to take over the coveted 6:05 p.m. Saturday time slot on Ted Turner's superstation TBS, an event so shocking fans called it Black Saturday, McMahon was pressured to sell the slot. Soon after, Jim Crockett Promotions took over that same national TV platform, making stars like Dusty, Flair, and the Rock and Roll Express household names. The kingdom was expanding. The war had begun. The mid-1980s were the golden age of Jim Crockett Promotions. With the national TBS deal secured, and Dusty Rhodes booking some of the most compelling storylines in wrestling history, JCP was on fire. The roster was a murderer's row of talent. Ric Flair, the Four Horsemen, Magnum TA, the Rock and Roll Express, the Road Warriors. They were selling out arenas, not just in their Carolina strongholds, but across the country as they pushed into new markets. The war with Vince McMahon was in full swing, a clash of titans, representing two fundamentally different philosophies of pro wrestling. But unchecked ambition can be a fatal flaw. Jim Crockett Jr.'s vision of a national NWA, unified under his banner, was aggressive and incredibly expensive. He began buying up other territories, most notably Bill Watts's Universal Wrestling Federation, UWF, in 1987. While the move gave JCP access to new TV slots and talent like Sting, it was part of a larger pattern of reckless spending. Crockett's own overexpansion, which included buying 2 private jets and handing out massive guaranteed contracts to stop stars from jumping to the WWF, was quickly draining cash. Then came the moment that would seal their fate. Thanksgiving night, 1987. For years, Thanksgiving was the home of Starrcade, JCP's crown jewel. With their first national pay-per-view, Crockett planned to take Starrcade to the entire country. Vince McMahon, in an act of pure corporate savagery, decided to counter-program. He announced the WWF's first-ever Survivor Series event for the exact same night. But he didn't stop there. McMahon delivered an ultimatum to the cable companies. If they chose to carry Starrcade, they would be barred from carrying WrestleMania 4 the following spring. It was extortion, plain and simple. The cable providers, faced with losing the WWF's proven pay-per-view juggernaut, had no real choice. The vast majority caved. Starrcade 87, held in Chicago, was financially crippled, with its buy rate dwarfed by Survivor Series. McMahon hadn't just competed with JCP, he had sabotaged them. The dominoes fell even faster. In January 1988, JCP scheduled its next pay-per-view, Bunkhouse Stampede. McMahon countered again, offering the first-ever Royal Rumble for free on the USA Network, gutting JCP's buy rate. Crockett's strategy of running shows in northern WWF cities backfired, alienating his loyal Carolina fan base, while the shows themselves were poorly attended. Behind the scenes, things were unraveling. With Dusty Rhodes serving as both head booker and a top star, accusations of favoritism began to bubble up. The promotion, once praised for its realism, started leaning on convoluted, dusty finishes, where screwy endings protected top stars but left fans feeling cheated. The magic was fading, replaced by a sense of creative and financial desperation. By mid-1988, the company was on the brink of collapse. They were struggling to make payroll, and checks were bouncing. Top stars were furious. The empire was bleeding out. Jim Crockett Jr., the man who had tried to take his father's company national, was out of options. He needed a buyer to save what was left. In November 1988, the deal was made. Jim Crockett Jr. sold a majority interest in his family's promotion to media mogul Ted Turner for a reported $9 million. The company that had been their life's work since 1931 was rebranded, eventually becoming World Championship Wrestling, or WCW. The sale wasn't just a business transaction, it was a personal tragedy that reportedly fractured the Crockett family, with some blaming Jim Jr. for losing everything. He had sold the family legacy to Ted Turner, and in doing so, had unknowingly set the stage for the public humiliation of his greatest champion. The sale to Turner and the birth of WCW should have been a new beginning. Instead, for Dusty Rhodes, it was the beginning of the end. The new corporate ownership, led by executive Jim Herd, clashed with Dusty's old-school booking philosophy. In early 1989, the final straw came after an on-screen angle where Dusty defied a strict no-blood edict from Turner executives. He was promptly fired from the company he had built. The American dream was out of a job. The old territory system was dead. With his options limited, there was only one place left to go that could pay him what he was worth. He had to walk into the lion's den. He had to call Vince McMahon. For Vince, this was the ultimate trophy. For years, he'd seen Dusty as his chief rival. McMahon had even tried to sign Dusty in the early 80s, but Dusty had turned him down, staying loyal to the NWA. Many in the industry believe Vince never forgot that. Over the years, there were what many saw as petty insider shots at his rival. He named Ted DiBiase's manservant Virgil, Dusty's real first name. He turned the wrestler one-man gang into Akeem, the African Dream, a dancing, jiving character some felt was meant to mock Dusty's persona. Now, the real American Dream was walking into his office, needing a job. McMahon offered him a lucrative contract, but it came with a catch. Dusty wanted a creative role, but Vince made it clear the job was in the ring and the gimmick was non-negotiable. In the summer of 1989, vignettes began to air on WWF television. They showed Dusty Rhodes, the three-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the voice of the common man, working as a plumber, a butcher's apprentice, and a pizza delivery man. It was framed as a celebration of the common man, but to many it felt like a parody. And then came the polka dots. When Dusty Rhodes made his in-ring WWF debut, he emerged not in his signature black trunks, but in a black singlet covered in massive, bright yellow polka dots. He danced to the ring, his unique physique exaggerated by the garish outfit. To the fans who had revered him as the gritty, authentic hero of the NWA, it felt like a cruel, humiliating joke. The debate has raged for decades. Was it a deliberate rib to humiliate him? His son, Dustin Rhodes, felt it was a stab in the back. Others, like Greg the Hammer Valentine, saw it as Vince slapping Dusty in the face. But some, including Cody Rhodes, have argued it was just Vince's tone-deaf vision of entertainment, pointing out that Dusty was still featured in major feuds and made more money than ever before. The intent remains debated, but the visual was about power. Vince McMahon hadn't just beaten his competition, he now employed its greatest symbol. He was taking the son of a plumber and turning him into a court jester, showing the world that in his universe, even the American Dream would have to dance to his tune. David Crockett, watching from afar, would later recall crying when he saw what had been done to the man who was the heart and soul of his family's promotion. To his immense credit, Dusty, ever the professional, committed to the gimmick completely. He was so charismatic that he managed to get it over. Fans cheered, danced along, and bought the merchandise. He was put in high-profile feuds with Macho King Randy Savage and the Million Dollar Man Ted DiBiase, and had a major match at WrestleMania 6. But the narrative was telling. At SummerSlam 1990, his manager Sapphire was bought by Ted DiBiase, betraying him for money. Shortly after, Dusty and his son Dustin, who had joined him in the WWF, quietly left the company in early 1991. The polka dots were gone, but the humiliation lingered in the minds of many fans. The $9 million deal that broke Jim Crockett's heart had, through a tragic turn of events, given Vince McMahon the ultimate revenge.
The story doesn't end there, of course. The sale of Jim Crockett Promotions to Ted Turner gave birth to WCW, the only company that would ever truly threaten WWE's dominance, leading to the historic Monday Night Wars. That war, too, would eventually be won by Vince McMahon, who in 2001 purchased the assets of his defunct rival, finally absorbing the video library and history of the promotion he had vanquished. Jim Crockett Jr. never fully returned to the wrestling business, remaining a distant figure, haunted by the collapse of his family's empire. And Dusty Rhodes? The American Dream was a force too powerful to be contained by polka dots. He returned to WCW and later became a revered mentor for a new generation of wrestlers in WWE's developmental system, passing on his wisdom and passion. His legacy now lives on through his sons Dustin and Cody Rhodes. When Cody returned to WWE, he framed his entire journey as a mission to win the championship his father never could, a quest to finish the story. He once summed up the old war perfectly, stating, Dusty Rhodes feuded with Vince McMahon, and he lost. That one sentence captures the tragedy and triumph of this story. It's a reminder that in the grand, often cruel narrative of professional wrestling, the past is never really past. The fall of Jim Crockett Promotions was your voting a business failure. It was a pivotal moment that reshaped the industry. It was the end of the territory era and a key victory in Vegas McMahon's national expansion. But it was also the story of a fire sale deal born of desperation, one that led to a calculated act of humiliation, a moment where business and personal vengeance collided, forever staining the legacy of one of recycling's most beloved heroes.